It's gonna be a long one today. Well, hello and happy new year, everybody. Welcome back to 115 Gaming, your home for all the tips and tools you need to excel at all of your favorite board games. Twilight Imperium is my favorite board game of all time. And as such, I can think of no better way to start the new year and no better entry for the basic sub-series than TI4. TI4 is a grand space opera 4X game about warfare, politics, and negotiation. In this game, players will take control of various factions, vying for ultimate control of the galaxy. This game has a lot of moving parts, but is not necessarily the most complex. Well, mechanically that is. It's really complex strategically. And as such, when you're first starting out learning TI4, there's a lot of good tips and a lot of good basic strategies that you can employ immediately to already start improving your games of Twilight Imperium. As a disclaimer, this video is aimed at two kinds of people: new players to TI and casual players of TI. For those people who do play TI more than once a year, then we definitely recommend checking out the Space Cats Peace Turtles podcast or their YouTube channel. Although probably, if you're in that crowd, you're probably already listening to SCPT anyway. And with that disclaimer out of the way, let's begin the basics of Twilight Imperium 4th edition. Part 1. Point tempo. This is the first and most important thing that I want you to learn from this video. If you take away nothing else from this video, I want you to remember this. TI4 is a game about achieving objectives, not about achieving military conquest. So, this is how you should think about TI4. You need to make sure that you score at least 1 point per round. Because there's a limit to scoring one secret objective and one public objective per round, this means that orchestrating a massive 5-point round isn't going to happen, with an exception. Which means you shouldn't be wasting your time or your brain power trying to make it happen. What is much more feasible, however, is putting your effort into scoring just 1 point a round. Every round, look at your available objectives. Pick the one that is the most achievable to you in that round, and then spend your whole round just going for that objective. Anything else is a second priority. What this allows you to do is narrow your goals and not feel overwhelmed with all the numerous pieces and things going on in the game. And it also allows you to properly manage your command counter economy more effectively in the first round. Think about it like this. If everyone scores 1 point a round, and they score all 3 of their secret objectives, then everyone will have 8 points by the time the first Stage 2 objective comes out. Which means, one way or another, the game will most likely end at round 5, when the first Stage 2 is revealed. So you can safely assume TI will last 5 rounds. Now, the game can last to round 6, but the chances of at least 2 people winning in round 5 is very high. A second way to think about it is like this. Assume that you will score all Stage 1 objectives, and all 3 of your secret objectives. This nets you 8 points, which means you need to be spending your first 4 rounds looking for ways to score the last 2 points to make up the difference. Part 2. Strategy cards. The backbone of TI4, the strategy cards. Knowing how to utilize the strategy cards fully will be key in you winning your game of TI. Knowing not just what card you should pick, but how you should utilize the other 5 cards that the other players picked is also important. We're going to first rank the strategy cards, and then we're going to talk about the secondary abilities of the strategy cards. Welcome to the TI4 strategy card tier list corner. In this section of the video, I am going to rank all of the 8 strategy cards in Twilight Imperium. And let's go ahead and start in order. So firstly, we have the leadership card here. It allows you to gain 3 command tokens and spend influence and get more command tokens for every 3 influence you spend. It's the first step in the initiative order, and it has a secondary ability that lets you spend influence. For every 3 influence you spend, you get a command token. Obviously, leadership is just a really solid card. Being first in the initiative order is always a plus, and getting command tokens is never a bad thing to have. You always want command tokens, so this is a great card. Next up is Politics. This one lets you choose the new speaker token, and then it lets you draw 2 action cards, and then it lets you look at the top 2 cards of the agenda deck and reorder them at the top or bottom of the deck. And the secondary lets you draw 2 action cards, and it's third in the initiative order. Now, Politics is obviously a really good card, but I'm going to throw it in A tier, and I'm not going to put it in S tier for a couple of reasons. One, you can get by through a whole game doing really well without ever needing to pick Politics. If you just happen to be in the top 3 of speaker order every round, you don't really need to pick Politics at any point in the game. You're in a pretty good spot to have a good strategy card pick. You want to pick Politics if for some reason you really want action cards, or 2, if you're at the bottom of the speaker order and you really need to be able to pick first for your strategy. And so really Politics is more situational than leadership. In leadership there's always a good scenario to pick it. And so for that reason Politics is going to be A tier, it's not going to be S tier. Next up is Construction. It's 4th in the initiative order, and it allows you to place 1 PDS or space dock in a system you control, and then it'll let you put a PDS in a system you control. And the secondary ability lets you take a strategy token, and you put that token in a system you control, and you can put a PDS or space dock there. So once again, I'm going to put this in the A tier. Now, why am I going to put it in the A tier? Because it pretty much is the only way you can get space docks or PDS. Well, honestly, sometimes space docks and PDS just aren't the most important things that you're going to be going for in a game. Sometimes structure objectives don't come up, and most games you could probably get by with just one other space dock out a couple tiles away from you. And so Construction is not going to be one that you're going to go for all the time. But that being said, there are some rounds where you really just need a PDS or a space dock, and so Construction is going to be the one you're going to go for. But once again, like Politics, it's much more situational. And I'm going to put it below Politics because getting action cards and the speaker token I think is a little better than just a space dock and a PDS. Next up we have Trade. That is 5th in the initiative order. First up, it lets you get 3 free trade goods, then it lets you replenish your commodities for free, and then it lets you choose people who can do the secondary ability of Trade without spending a strategy token. And the secondary ability of Trade lets you spend a strategy token to replenish your commodities. So Trade is another really good card, but I'm going to put it in A tier once again. I'm going to put it behind Politics but in front of Construction. And again, there's a couple of reasons for this. One, trade goods are very good. They're very good, obviously. And replenishing your commodities, also very good. But once again, it just seems more situational. Like, trade goods are great, but you don't always need them, and you can get by without them. And honestly, if you have a really good command counter economy, spending a strategy token to replenish your commodities with the secondary is not a bad pick. But sometimes you're just really hurting for cash, and Trade is a really good pick. And so for that, I'm going to put it above Construction, but below Politics, because Speaker is just a really good thing to have. All right, next up is Warfare. It's number 6 in Initiative, and it reads like this. You can take a command token that you have placed off of the board and put it into your reinforcements. And the secondary ability reads that you are allowed to produce in your home system for spending a strategy token. This is a great card. In my group, I think it's one of the most underrated cards, personally. It's just so versatile. Being able to take a command token off the board and putting in your reinforcements just allows you to do so many different various strategies and plays. I couldn't really list all of them for you. And so for that reason, Warfare is absolutely going to be an S tier card. It's just going to be behind Leadership, I think, because command tokens are they're just really good, but it's pretty close. I really love Warfare. All right, next up you've got Technology, which is probably going to be a card that's going to be picked every round. It's number 7 in Initiative, and its primary ability reads you may research 1 technology, and then you may spend 6 resources to research 1 technology. And the secondary ability reads that you may spend a strategy token and 4 resources to research 1 technology. Okay, so obviously this is S tier, and the reason this is S tier is because pretty much this is the only way that you can research technology, and technology is super important in a game of TI. So it's definitely going into S tier, but I'm gonna put it behind Leadership and Warfare, just because honestly, most factions can kind of get by on just using the secondary ability. It's cheaper. You'll probably always save a command token for the secondary, and getting 1 technology per round is not a bad spot to be in. It gets you in a position to get that 2 technology per color objectives that come up. And so the reason I'm putting it in S tier but behind the others is, yes, it's the only way you can research tech, but the secondary ability is much more viable for you to use every round than the primary ability. 6 resources is pretty expensive for 1 technology, but it's still S tier because it gives you the ability to research 2 technology. All right, and then next up we have got Imperial. This is the last in Initiative order at number 8, and it reads like this. If you fulfill a public objective, you may immediately score it right now. Then, if you control Mecatol Rex, you may score 1 victory point, otherwise draw 1 secret objective. And the secondary ability reads that you may spend a strategy token to draw a secret objective. Okay, this is the best card in the game, if you ask me, bar none. The ability to score objectives in the action phase, the ability to potentially get a free point, and also just getting secret objectives These are all incredible things to have. You want to fill out your hand of 3 secret objectives as quick as possible. You want, obviously, to be able to score. If you can score 1 point a round, like I've said, that's a great typical. But Imperial lets you score more than 1 point a round, which is even better. You do go last in the initiative order, but the payoff that you get from taking Imperial is so big. And the amount of late game point swings that you can pull off just by picking Imperial is unparalleled. All right, finally we have Diplomacy. It is number 2 in initiative, and basically it reads that you can use this card to pick a system that's not a home system or Mecatol Rex. Everybody has to put a command token in there, and then you can refresh, and then you can refresh 2 planets that you control. And the secondary ability reads that you can spend a strategy token to refresh 2 planets you control. All right, so I'm gonna put this one in D tier. I'm sorry for any diplomacy lovers. I hate diplomacy. I'm sorry. The only good thing about it is the initiative order. In the final round, if somebody's already picked leadership and Imperial, then you can pick diplomacy for a pretty good initiative order. And you're gonna have to win Slay really hard. But honestly, the ability is just the most situational card that you could ever have. The 2 times that you would want to use diplomacy are, once again, if you want a high initiative in the final round, or 2, if you know people are trying to attack you, and you know the one pathway they can get to you is 1 tile, you can use diplomacy to lock up that tile. Which is good, but the amount of times that that's going to be useful to you is not going to happen all that much. And again, there's probably about 5 rounds in a game, and if you're picking this for 1 of your 5 rounds, I don't know, it's got to be a really, really good situation. And so for that reason, diplomacy is definitely going to be ranked in the D tier. I've often found that the most imperative part of picking a strategy card is knowing which cards you don't need to pick. Here's an example of what I mean. People can get tunnel vision, thinking they need things like command tokens, so they immediately take leadership without thinking of the other cards. But think about it for a second. A player with a lot of influence on their planets can easily use the secondary of leadership without having to take the leadership card. This means the player could have potentially taken a card like Technology instead, which would have allowed them to research 2 techs and use the secondary of leadership to still gain the command tokens they needed. So, when looking at the cards available to you and knowing your goal for the round, eliminate strategy cards that you can use the secondary of, and pick the strategy card that has the primary ability that you absolutely need. Of course, keep in mind that the second part of this is realizing that you need to make sure you have enough strategy tokens to use all the secondaries that you plan for. Part 3. Negotiation. TI4 is not a war game. It is a negotiation game. And as such, it is important that you understand and realize all of the tools you have in your belt in order to make successful deals and negotiations with the other players at the table. Everyone has access to the same basic tools of negotiations. These are promissory notes, commodities, and relic fragments. Think of these as money to buy things from the other players. Oftentimes, in order to secure your victory points, you'll need help from another player, and using these tools at the right time to get their help is often the way to go. Out of the promissory notes, the support for the throne and ceasefire cards are the most reliable to sway a player to your side, but make sure you don't throw these around willy-nilly. Everyone is always willing to do something for commodities, so you can never go wrong with offering these. Relic fragments can be appealing to some players, and yet others might not be interested in them at all. Players who already have 2 fragments of a color that you have are probably the ones most willing to trade for them, so keep an eye out. In addition to the basic things that everyone has, also be aware that every faction probably has their own specific thing to offer to the table for a deal. Be sure to scour your faction sheet for any abilities, resources, or various powers that only you can give out. For instance, every faction has a specific promissory note that only they can give. So maybe you're the Creus and you have the note that lets other players place additional wormhole tokens. Maybe you're the Argent Flight, who has an automatic 6 votes in the agenda phase. Or maybe you're the Hakan, who can broker trade deals between 2 non-neighboring players. For a cut of the pie, of course. Every faction has something unique to offer the table, so find out what it is and exploit it as much as possible. Part 4. Technology. Technology. The little mini-game in TI4 of matching colors that's just way more satisfying than it ever has any right to be. Now, the cool thing about TI4 technology is that there are 4 different general tech trees that you can go down. Of course, in a given game, you can't research every technology, and so knowing which trees you want to go down is important for your abilities in the mid to late game. There are 4 tech trees in TI4. Blue tech, yellow tech, green tech, and red tech. Blue tech is easily the best deck in the game. It has cards that typically improve your movement and action economy in good ways. gaining an extra action, having faster ships, moving through asteroid fields, moving through other player ships, and exploring frontier tokens. These are all good to have, so you can't go wrong with blue. The yellow deck is interesting because it's kind of a 50-50 good and situational. The yellow deck has a variety of bonuses that interact with several things: exploring planets multiple times, reducing production costs, redistributing command tokens, immediate production after taking a planet, attacking non-fighter ships in battle. These are all good abilities, but some of them are too far down the tech tree to be worth it, and a lot of them are too situational. Sarween Tools is the best one in my opinion. It's easy to get early, and it reduces all of your productions. You can't go wrong with taking this tech and skipping the rest, but don't write it off completely, as sometimes certain situations lend themselves to yellow tech. Green tech is another 50-50 deck and pretty situational. The deck can help you get extra command tokens and extra action cards, which is definitely great, but the other half of the deck grants you extra infantry or a way to destroy infantry, which is either too small a bonus or too situational to use. Prophecy of Kings added some tech that interacts with tech specialty planets in cool ways, which could be good, but once again, it's very situational. That being said, hypermetabolism and the tech that lets you get extra action cards are really good and really solid picks. Red tech. Where did it all go so wrong? Red tech sucks. It's supposed to improve your combat potential, but all of the cards are way too situational and rarely, if ever, come up. And in a game that prioritizes negotiation and trade, researching military technology seems to be somewhat of a waste in most of my games. However, AI development and plasma scoring are okay, but if you can get something better first, do that instead. Playing the color matching game of the tech decks can often distract from another key aspect of technology: the unit upgrades. These allow you to improve certain ship types in your fleet, which can grant some key abilities at the right time. If you want a unit upgrade, we recommend figuring it out early, as knowing which units you want to upgrade will allow you to pick the tech cards that you need elsewhere to count as your prerequisites for those unit upgrades. You'd hate to need a certain unit upgrade only to realize you went down a completely different tech path than the unit upgrade requires. If you're feeling aimless in technology research, try and at least grab 2 techs of each color, as the public objectives that require this seem to come up a lot. Part 5. Combat. Our section on combat is as minimal as your combat should be in your first games of TI. Remember, as we've said before, this is not a war game, this is a negotiation game. And so what that means is that you should only engage in combat as a last resort. We believe there are 2 scenarios in which you should engage in combat. 1, when you need another tile that another player owns and they absolutely will not accept any deal for it, and so you have to take it from them. Or 2, when you have to take somebody's home system away so they don't score public objectives. Now, let me clarify. I do not mean that having a military in TI4 is not important. Having a military and a big fleet is obviously super important as a negotiating tactic for all various means, and also for defense for yourself. But what I am saying is that meaningless battles and tons of battles is not going to help you in TI4. Warfare in this game is expensive and complex, and it can halt your point tempo in the game. So understanding how to use combat effectively and minimally is key in winning TI4. We recommend staying away from combat in your early games, and trying to make deals instead whenever possible. An unnecessary battle can completely halt your point tempo and cripple your fleet, leaving you vulnerable to other players at the worst times. In addition, don't be afraid to retreat from a battle if you start to lose. Look, sometimes it doesn't have to be an all-or-nothing ordeal. Part 6. Mecatol Rex. There it sits in the middle of the board, the most appetizing-looking tile in the whole game, Mecatol Rex. In my opinion, the biggest lie in the game. Everybody wants Mecatol Rex, but the fact of the matter is that the risk in going for Mecatol Rex is very high, and the payoff, probably you won't get any payoff. And yet, that doesn't stop people from going for Mecatol Rex. We here at 115 think that trying to take and hold Mecatol Rex for the entire game is pretty much pointless. But there are some really cool ways that you can use Mecatol Rex every once in a while in a game for some cool point swings or for other advantages in the game. And so if you want Mecatol Rex, here are the 4 strategies that I've found that most people use in regards to Mecatol Rex. Mecatol Rex's 1 point. One of my favorite ways to use Mecatol Rex is to be the first one to take it so that I can get the free victory point, and then allowing anyone else to take the planet from me afterwards. This is a guaranteed point that no one can take from you. Take the point and let everyone else destroy their fleets for the planet itself, using Mecatol Rex for 2 free command tokens. Now, my favorite way to use Mecatol Rex is to use the planet simply for 2 free command tokens. Because Rex has an influence value of 6, you can use this card with the secondary or primary of leadership for 2 free tokens. When I take Rex, I stay away from the Imperial card like the plague, so that the table doesn't get freaked out. And I let that buy me a few rounds of time where I can use Rex as a token generator instead of a victory point generator. You can leave Rex relatively undefended so that you're not losing anything if someone takes the planet from you. You were just there for a token boost on the short term anyways. Using Mecatol Rex for big point swings. You'll notice that the Imperial card allows you to score objectives during the action phase. It also gives you a free victory point if you hold Mecatol Rex. So often, if you're behind in the point tempo, grabbing the Imperial card and using it right after you take Mecatol Rex can net you an additional 1 to 3 victory points, which can catch you up to the players in the lead, or it could put you in the lead itself. Just beware that the moment you have both the Imperial card and Mecatol Rex, that other players will swarm you harder than an angry beehive. Using Mecatol Rex for the Imperial point. Maybe you feel confident in your defense of Rex, so you decide to try and sit on it and keep scoring the Imperial point. This is a bad strategy, for a few reasons. 1, people can team up and take the planet from you. Or 2, people can just take the Imperial card from you before you can. The Imperial point is often something you might be able to get luckily, once, maybe twice. But do not rest a whole game on this one strategy. Part 7. First round strategies. So a key in establishing a good momentum and a good point tempo in a game of TI4 is all in the opening. Now, in the first round, you can be rest assured that probably you're obviously not going to have any aggression or combat. You want to expand as much as you can in your first round so you can get a lot of resources and so you can gain a couple of neighbors for the mid and late games. Here are the best strategy card picks for round 1, and here are some general strategies and goals that you want in a good opening of TI. Here are the strategy card picks for round 1. Leadership. Pick leadership to be able to get a head start on having plenty of command tokens, allowing you to be able to use as many secondary abilities as you want in round 1. Diplomacy. Don't pick diplomacy. Politics. Take politics if you were the last in speaker order and you need to be able to get some good strategy cards in the middle game. Construction. Pick construction if you want space docks out in the middle of the board early. This will also jumpstart your ability to score structure objectives. Trade. Take trade to replenish commodities and gain extra trade goods. You can also use it to make you and your neighbors replenish their commodities for free, giving you a head start economically on the other half of the table. Warfare. Warfare is an underrated round 1 strategy card pick in my group. You can use it to expand outward past your initial 2 tiles, allowing you to have an even better round 2, but you can also use it to produce in your home system early if you lack the ships and infantry to take multiple planets. Then you can expand out to take your 4 planets. Technology. The benefits of picking technology are obvious. Getting the potential to research 2 technologies in round 1 is a huge boost in the early game, especially if technology-themed objectives are in play. Imperial. Imperial can be a rare round 1 pick, but not an unviable one. If you're in a position to fulfill 2 public objectives early, then using Imperial for an early victory point boost can be a good play. And also, being able to grab more secret objectives early is always a good thing to do. Generally, try and take 4 planets and get at least 1 neighbor during round 1. Round 1 is your time to expand your empire as much as possible and to hopefully gain a few neighbors to trade with. At the very least, try and take 2 tiles with 4 to 5 planets. You want as many planets as you can so that you can have a resource-rich round 2. You want neighbors so that you can begin making trade deals and swapping commodities as soon as possible. Part 8. Final round strategies. I learned this the hard way. There are pretty much 2 ways that you can win in a game of TI4. Here are the 2 paths to victory. The leadership status phase win. The leadership win is simple. You need the leadership card in the final round, and you need to fulfill your last objective, and then you just need to hold your home system. This way, if the game reaches the status phase, you will score points first, and you will win by getting to 10 victory points before anyone else. But beware, just when you think your victory is assured, the second path to victory can sneak up on you, and that is the Imperial action phase win. Because the Imperial card lets you score a public objective immediately in the action phase, it's often a good play to take Imperial, fulfill an objective, and use Imperial immediately to get to 10 victory points before anyone even scores in the status phase. This is a great way to win. But again, beware that taking Imperial is broadcasting to the rest of the players what you're trying to do, and they'll all get to act before you in the initiative order, which means they can team up to stop you from fulfilling your objective. So what this really means is that since you need either the leadership card or the Imperial card to win, the real path to victory is taking politics in the second to last round, which is probably round 4. This is why point tempo is so important. Because the strategy cards are the most important thing in the endgame, you need to be in the first 2 spots to pick a card, which means you need to take politics in round 4, the second to last round. This lets you take the speaker token, which allows you the flexibility of either taking leadership or Imperial in the final round of the game. And those are the basics of Twilight Imperium. We hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we hope it helps new players get better at our favorite game, TI4. Look forward to the new year and subscribe for all the cool things we have planned, new videos, new games, new hosts. Until next week, see ya.